So finally, you had arrived.
Yes, and while I thought of it as a victory, I could not help but think about these poor women being driven to a prison through no fault of their own, in all probability for life. Imagine how easy it would be to walk to the gallows instead of this tomb of living horrors. I looked at Miss Tilly Maynard. I said, "Are you crazy?" She said, "No, but we have been sent here and we must find some means of escape. They will be few, though, if all doctors, as Dr. Field, refuse to listen to me or give me a chance to prove my sanity."
Did you ever worry that you may never escape?
The thought loomed in my mind, yes, but I had full faith in my editors. Like I said, the story was too good to miss. I did feel a sharp twinge in my heart, though. I had been pronounced insane by 4 expert doctors and shut up behind bolts of a madhouse. I also feared the lunatics I'd be confined with.
And what did you find out about the other patients?
Miss Tilly Maynard gently but firmly pleaded her case. All her remarks were as rational as any I have ever heard. She begged that they try her for the insane test and give her a chance to prove her sanity, to give her justice. There was a Mrs. Louise Schantz, who was a German woman, and her son just dropped her off there. The doctor began questioning her, and when he realized she did not speak a word of English, he asked to nurse Miss Group. Miss Group was one of those people ashamed of their nationality, so she refused, saying she only knew but a few words of her mother tongue. Thus, Mrs. Louise Schantz was confined to an asylum without ever being given a chance to make herself understood. Can such carelessness be excused when it is so easy to find an interpreter? Here was a woman taken without her consent from a free world to an asylum, and there being given no chance to prove her sanity. Confined, probably for life behind bars, without being told in her language why and what for. Compare this with a criminal who is given every chance to prove his innocence. Each patient went through this weak and trifling examination. I was last, but I was determined to act as I do when I'm free, except I would not tell them my name or where my home was.
So, another expert at work.
The doctor flirted with the nurse the entire time. He asked her more questions about supper or her afternoon affairs than he asked me. Then he wrote my fate in the book, and that was it. Fear quickly turned to determination. After only a few minutes at the front doors of the asylum, I was determined then and there to make my mission of benefit to my suffering sisters.
Did you find other patients with similar unfair stories?
There were so many sad stories. There was a Sarah Fishbaum who was sent there because of her husband, who discovered she had a fondness for other men. The nurses would tease her and tell her to make advances on the doctor when he came in. There was a Josephine whose family was back in France. One day she fell ill and couldn't understand the court procedures and was sent away. There was a Margaret who was also German. One day she got in a quarrel while working as a cook and was sent away for losing her temper. Many patients appeared sane without any seemingly insane traits about them.
Did you find the medical treatment provided by the staff to be useful?
What medical treatment? The nurses would tease the patients, pull their hair, beat them. The doctors knew what was happening, but he looked the other way. And the patients would get beaten worse for saying something about it.
So, let's talk about the living arrangements. What stands out for you?
The freezing cold. They would not turn on the heat. We were sitting there shivering all day. The first day I had to take a bath and the water was ice cold. I protested. How useless that was. I went inside the water and this horrid woman began to scrub me. I cannot think of any other term to describe it but scrub. She took soft soap from this tin pail and rubbed it all over my face and my pretty hair. And then I got 1, 2, 3 buckets of water thrown in my face, my eyes, my ears, my nose. I felt like I was drowning. As I got out, I saw Miss Tilly Maynard, who came in ill. Can you imagine plunging that sick girl into ice cold water when it made me, who has never been ill, shake? Oh, and they did not change the water between girls. They reused it until it was black. We had 2 towels to dry on in the morning. I saw crazy patients with the most dangerous eruptions all over their face, dry on the towels, and then girls with clean skin turned to use them. I decided that my skirt would make do for a towel. Don't even bother asking about soap. We were then told to sit on a hard bench, and the hair of 45 women was combed by 2 nurses and only 6 combs. The food was disgusting. I couldn't eat it. There would be a large bowl on the table with this pink goop the nurses called tea. There was a piece of bread by the bowl, cut thick and buttered. A small saucer with 5 prunes accompanied the bread. I tried to eat the bread, but I could not eat the butter. A patient next to me said I could request it without butter because very few people could eat it. Meanwhile, the nurses would have melons and grapes and bountiful fruit and white bread and fresh meats and eat it in front of us. Our hunger increased tenfold. Patients were forced to sit straight all day in a cold room on hard benches. They couldn't walk, move, or stretch. We'd have one daily walk outside on the grounds, but patients were never able to spend any time outside alone. The only amusement, if it may be called that, was a once-a-week ride on the merry-go-round outside. I had intended to get committed to the violent wards, the lodge and the retreat. But after hearing the testimony from 2 sane women about the horrors from the nurses, hair pulling out patches, choking, beating, spitting on them, I decided not to risk my health or my hair, so I did not get violent. Toward the last of my stay, I had been cut off from all visitors, so when the lawyer, Peter Hendricks, came and said that my friends were willing to take charge of me if I'd rather be with them than at the asylum, I was only too glad to give my consent. I begged him to send me some food immediately upon his arrival to New York. I had been one of them for 10 days, and it felt intensely selfish to leave them to their sufferings. I had a desire to stay and support them through sympathy in my presence, but only for a moment. The bars were down and freedom was sweeter to me than ever. Soon I was crossing the river, back to New York City. I was once again a free girl after 10 days in the madhouse on Blackwell's island.
I bet you were a different person than the person who came in. What happened when you left that place?
After I left Blackwell, I was summoned to appear before the grand jury. I answered the summons with pleasure because I longed to help those of God's most unfortunate children whom I left prisoners behind me. If I could not bring them the boon of all boons, liberty, I hoped to at least influence others to make life more bearable for them. The grand jury invited me on the trip back to the island, but the doctors and nurses were tipped off beforehand, so my trip back was vastly different than my first experience. Everything was conspicuously clean. There was bountiful food, 2 large bags of salt. Although the doctor did admit that he had no way of knowing whether the bath water was reused and blamed lack of funding for poor quality of food.
So the madhouse was a turning point in your life. Can you discuss the significance of this?
Most of the women I had met there were gone or mysteriously too ill to speak, except for one, who was a witness to my experience before the district attorney. I didn't think they'd take my account seriously because of all the changes, but the DA's report to the court proposed all of the changes I suggested. I am happy to state that as a result of my visit to the asylum, the city of New York had appropriated $1 million to the care of the insane. Additionally, one of the best results was this new form of stunt journalism, which would open up doors for female reporters to finally have an established place in journalism.